You have probably heard about the Age of Aquarius, right? For decades, it's been this beautiful idea floating around, this promise of a future filled with peace, love, and some kind of grand spiritual awakening. And let's be honest, in a world like ours, that sounds pretty good. But what if that whole vision isn't what it seems? What if it's something else entirely?
I mean, you know these lyrics. They're from the musical Hair. And back in '69, they perfectly captured that hopeful vibe. They painted this incredible picture of a new dawn for all of humanity, a time when we would finally get past all our hang-ups and evolve into something better.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. For this explainer, we're diving into a research paper that makes a pretty shocking claim. It argues that this whole spiritual movement wasn't some spontaneous thing. Instead, it was an occult agenda, kicked off over 100 years ago. An agenda designed, it claims, to deceive the entire world.
So, to really wrap our heads around this argument, we have to go back, way back. We're talking the 19th century to the very beginning of what we now call the New Age movement. The source we're looking at traces a direct line from this old esoteric philosophy called theosophy straight to the spiritual ideas that are all over the place today.
This timeline really lays it all out. You can see how these fringe ideas, starting with a woman named Helena Blavatsky in the 1870s, were then picked up and developed by her successor, Alice Bailey. And then, bam! In the 1970s, it all just explodes into the mainstream. It's a wild ride from a secretive occult group right into the heart of pop culture.
Okay, so what is theosophy, really? This slide gets right to the point. The whole thing is built on this idea of a secret spiritual hierarchy. Think of it as a secret society of super enlightened masters who are behind the scenes, pulling the strings, guiding all of humanity's evolution. This idea of a hidden hand shaping our destiny is absolutely central to everything that follows.
All right, now this is where it stops being just some old philosophy and starts looking like a very specific, time-sensitive agenda. According to the source, Alice Bailey's writings weren't just ramblings. They laid out a detailed blueprint she actually called the plan.
Bailey literally wrote that these hidden masters, who've supposedly been working in secret for thousands of years, were getting ready to go public. This moment, which she called the externalization, would be the real beginning of the New Age.
And here it is. This is what the source presents as the absolute smoking gun. Decades ago, Bailey pinpointed the year 2025. She said that's when this secret hierarchy would get together for their big centennial meeting to decide when to start showing themselves to the world. I mean, that's not some vague prophecy. That's a specific date for a world-changing event.
Now, this is absolutely crucial. At the head of this whole New Age plan is a figure Bailey calls the Christ. But, and this is a huge but, the source makes it crystal clear, this is not Jesus of Nazareth. Bailey's Christ is a world teacher, an avatar, a figure who will come to unite all religions into one. That's a fundamentally different person from the Christ of the Bible.
So the big question is, how did these really complex, kind of weird, esoteric ideas get from dusty old occult books into the culture we all live in? Well, the source argues it wasn't an accident. It was a subtle, deliberate infiltration into pop culture, into self-help, and even into organized religion.
Get this. 34.6 billion. That's how many views the hashtag manifestation has on TikTok. This whole idea that you can create your own reality with your thoughts, that's a core New Age teaching. And now, it's just a mainstream self-help trick, completely disconnected from its occult origins for most people.
The source we're looking at argues that symbols like the Enneagram, the labyrinth, or chakras, they're not just cool designs or trendy aesthetics. They're seen as entry points, vectors that carry an entire worldview with them. A worldview that redefines God, redefines who you are, and has even, they claim, found its way into Christian churches.
And here, the author points to some really specific examples of how these ideas have allegedly seeped into Christian spaces. They argue that things like the prosperity gospel are just the law of attraction with a different name. That practices like centering prayer or the hugely popular Enneagram personality tool are actually rooted in occult philosophy, bringing these foreign concepts right into Christian worship.
Okay, so this is where all the different threads come together. This is the central argument of the paper. The author claims that this entire New Age plan, from its secret beginnings to its modern-day popularity, isn't just another spiritual path. They believe it's a direct and frankly chilling fulfillment of biblical end-times prophecy.
Just look at this comparison. The source lays it out, side by side. And the parallels they draw are pretty stark. Where the New Age expects a unifying world teacher, the Bible warns of a deceptive Antichrist. Where Bailey talks about enlightened masters, the Bible warns of fallen spirits. The New Age goal of one unified world religion is seen as the great falling away. And that core teaching, that we are all divine, is identified as the oldest lie in the book, "You shall be as gods."
And listen to this quote, which the author highlights. It shows that this goal of a single universal religion, it isn't some hidden conspiracy. It's stated right out in the open. The whole vision is for a figure who comes for everyone to absorb all the old faiths into something new. From the paper's perspective, that lines up perfectly with the description of a global false messiah.
So as we get to the conclusion, the source doesn't just wrap things up with a neat little bow. No, it shifts gears entirely. It becomes an urgent appeal, a direct call to action for anyone reading to wake up to what the author sees as the signs of the times.
The author anchors their entire argument in this direct warning from Jesus in the book of Matthew. The point they're making is that this explosion of spiritual alternatives and charismatic new teachers, it's not a surprise. It's something that was explicitly predicted 2,000 years ago.
And right here, the source presents what it sees as the only possible command for this moment. It interprets this verse from the book of Revelation as a direct, divine instruction to get out, to separate completely from what it identifies as this rising, false, global religious system, what the Bible calls Mystery Babylon.
So in the face of all this, what's the response? The paper ends with this final, four-step call. First, exercise discernment. Test everything. Second, reject this false unity. Don't compromise truth for the sake of a man-made peace. Third, proclaim the true gospel and the uniqueness of Christ. And finally, number 4, be ready. Live with an urgent hope in the prophesied, literal return of Jesus Christ.
So, in the end, the paper we've just walked through frames the age of Aquarius not as an era of enlightenment, but as possibly the most sophisticated spiritual deception in all of human history. It sets up a stark choice between two completely different futures, led by two completely different saviors, and it leaves us all with one massive question. Which one is the great hope, and which is the grand deception?